Okay, so we've got our application connected to Mongoose. So now we actually want to use this model and the database connection that we have to run a query and pull task data so we can actually display data. So inside my task controller, I need to reference the task model. So we'll require it. So this is kind of our equivalent of a .NET using statement where our controllers are linked to our models. This is in the controller, the tasks controller. So we want to use the task model to fetch a list of tasks and pass these to the view for display. So we use our task object that I'm creating here in line 6. We actually just call find. And find, if there's no filter, it'll get everything. So find takes a callback. It runs. So in here, we get one of two things back whenever we call a find operation. First parameter in Mongoose is always an error. So we either get an error or we get a bunch of data back. Both of these parameters won't be filled, only one or the other. If we have an error, our tasks will be empty. If we have no error, the data from the task collection is going to be in here. Yeah, it's just a variable to hold the data. If you want, you could call it data. Call it anything. So if an error occurs, error param will be filled. No errors. Tasks. Variable. I guess it would be the tasks. So now we can just do a quick check. If we get an error, we can maybe log it to the console. And for now, we could print it to the screen. So if we call res.end, that would also display the error message on the screen. And then we'll just have an else. If we have no error, load the view. So our index view is only going to load if our query runs successfully without an error being triggered. Now, if I refresh my page, I'm still connected to my database. So I'll try this. We'll hit refresh. I'll put the code back up in just a second. So I'll go to my tasks page. So we get no data, but no error. So that's a good sign that we can connect and query the database. But what we now need to do, what do we need to do with this tasks object? So this is holding the results of our query, but our page is still blank. Well, let's go back and look at our index controller from last week. So this was the default controller. Here was our index method. So we called res.render. We got a get request. We called res.render. We specified the name of the view to load, which was this index.hbs. What's happening here? Right, we're passing some data from the controller to the view. So we need to do the same thing here, render the view, but also we want to pass this tasks object, which is just a JSON object that holds our query result. So here, the value is our query result, and we're just giving this a name that we can refer to it by in our view. I'll just keep the name the same. All the JSON key, it gets just a JSON object key, so any of them are in purple and bold. Yeah, when it sees it in curly braces, it automatically puts those key names in purple. So this is kind of our equivalent of our .NET return view statement, where we have a parameter in that for passing data back. So we can refer to this tasks object now in our view using our handlebars syntax. So we'll go back to our view, and maybe we'll add just a simple loop to try and output the data, and then if that works, we'll format it as a proper table of rows and columns. Actually, for now, let's just do it this way. We'll use your handlebar syntax. We can loop through our task object. And in here, we can say this, but so inside our loop, we're going to output the task name and then an HTML line break. So it should just print them vertically. So if we try our page again, our handlebar syntax loops through the task object and lets us output the name property. So this word here on line 3, where I'm looping through tasks, it has to match the JSON key here. And I believe it's case sensitive. Well, let's try it. Let's say I pass it in as a capital T. Right? No awareness of what that object is if those names don't match. So the key name I'm passing in has to match what I'm trying to output here. Or if I put this as name with capital N, again, it doesn't recognize that property because my schema has the name in lowercase. Where are you? So I want to reformat my view a little bit. So we can query the database using our Mongoose model. And then we're just passing the query result black when we load our view. And then using handlebars on the front end to render it. Here, it's called layout.hbs. This was built in. The Express generator created this for us. Yep. So in the app.js, I believe it's laid out in here. I'm looking for where it's linked. It actually doesn't specify. Yeah, you would go to the layout. We did, right? We added Bootstrap last week and the nav bar. So the nav bar wasn't here. We went into the layout file and added them. So what this gives us by default was it gave us this line without line 6, without Bootstrap. And then the nav bar, this whole piece, we added. Yep. Yep. So if I want to turn this into a table, so if I create a table with some column headings, so my task name, priority, so now I could wrap my data. So for each task, we want to create a row and get rid of movie tags. Actually, find my handlebars is a little more readable with some spacing. So we'll put it in priority. Ah, right. Thank you. This should go inside of my table. Very good point. So my loop needs to go inside. That's better. If we wanted to, we could go, I'm not going to bother, but if I wanted to make my table sortable, I could go grab the same JavaScript library we added to our .NET site last week. That's sortable.js. Save that into my public JavaScripts, and then add a link to it and add sortable, and then my table will sort. And maybe up here, I'll also add a link to tasks/add. So I could And right now we get not found because we haven't handled this route. Doesn't know what to, only knows the task's route path. Doesn't know what to do at any other URL inside of tasks. Yeah, it's going to go, that's right. It's going to go in the task controller. So any routes that are part of tasks are handled here. Again, if you think in our .NET controller, we have all of the methods related to products, index, create, edit, delete. So we would need a get handler here. So let's do that. We'll build a get handler for /add, and then we can build a simple add a task form. So this one's pretty simple because all we want to do is load a view. We're not passing any data. We just want to load the form. So the user can add a new one. So here we just want to call rows.render. And we'll create a new view inside of views tasks called add. Yeah, so this is our tasks controller. That's right, task.js is the tasks controller. So any URLs related to tasks, they're all handled through this one file. So we already built an index view here. So now we want to build add.hbs in here, which will be a basic form. Yep. So if I add a new file here, call it add. I'll put it inside of the task subfolder. It should be HBS. I missed that. That's actually here. You can pick it. If you choose handlebars mustache, it is in here. Oops. Yes. I forgot to put in that extension. I don't know why it's not. I'm going to delete and do that again. Oh, you know what? I never clicked the do refactor. Refactor, rename. I have one more click to do. Do refactor. There. So now it's HBS. So now if I click my link, we'll get a blank form. Or it will crash. All right. Maybe I didn't create that properly. I'll do it again. Okay, we'll try that again. So I'm going to add a new file. I'll give it the extension right from the beginning. Okay, so now I've got an empty form. We never put the extensions in because the view engine's defined in app.js. App.js already tells us all the views have HBS extensions. That's odd. What is going on? Oh, in here as well. Because I did a full refactor. So the path is /add. Their sixth time is a charm. Yeah, I didn't think. Yeah, I didn't realize. I shouldn't have said refactor everywhere. Yeah. So now I can just create a simple form here. So I'll create a form. I don't actually need to put an action because this form will post to itself. I'll just use a few bootstrap classes for formatting. Yep. Technically, yes, you can do it. It's incredibly complicated on the back end to program, though. So we're still generally building forms that are mapped to particular schemas. It's great that Visual Studio does this for us. We're doing it manually here. That is true. So my complete will be a checkbox. Our last element's going to be a select box, be a drop down. Oops. So I'll just create the options 1 to 5. We've got name, text box for name, a checkbox for complete. In fact, I don't know, should we even have the complete box or should we just assume all new tasks are not complete? And if they're complete, there'd be no point tracking them in our task manager. So we probably don't even need this. Well, our task model already says the default is false. So we probably will want this on our edit. We don't need it in the add. We can take it out. So we'll see how this looks. So we really just need a text box that's required, a drop-down list, and a save button. It's not very fancy. Probably want to move my save button over here. good enough for now. So we've got our drop down 1 to 5, and we're going to automatically default it to being not complete.
You go back to your task controller.
Yep. So right now we have a get handler that will load this form. So the last thing we want to do is we need another handler at /add, but this one needs to be a post handler. Because get will load the form, but we have no code that will actually process it. If I add a task, it posts to itself, but we've only told the server how to handle a get request at this URL. We haven't told it what to do if we get a post request. So we need, this is the last thing we'll do today. So in this case, we're going to use router.post. So when we get a post request, so what we want to do in this case is use Mongoose to try to save a new task object. So Mongoose has a create method where we can pass in a JSON object. So if we get the name property from our request body, so we're going to create a task, and we're actually going to chain a couple of methods together. We could do this in one method and then write another call, or we can do it like this. Yep, so we're populating just name and priority, but our schema should default to complete to false. Right? Here's our model. Default value is false. So if we don't supply it, it should automatically be false. So we try to call create and we get back either an error or a new task object. If we get an error, we'll log it and send it to the browser. What if it saves successfully? What should we do if this works? Where should we take the user? Yeah, so after we save, what should the user see in the browser? We could show them the new entry, or yeah, we could take them back to the root of tasks and they'll see it in the table. So in this case, we can call response dot, there's a redirect method of the express. So we're just going to go back to the main path, the main tasks page. So let's see if this works. Can we create a new task with the properties from our request body, save it to the database, and redirect the user? We may need to adjust it a little bit. So we'll try it. So I'll just refresh this and resend my. All right, there it is. Yep. So the view or the controller? Yep. And notice that it defaults, it does default to false when we don't specify because our Mongoose model set up. Our Mongoose model set up, that property will default to false if we don't provide any value. So your input names, these are mapped directly to the code in the controller here. They have to match request.body. If I name them in lowercase in my view, name and priority, they've got to be lowercase here.
Go back to the view.
Sure. Okay, I've pushed the code to GitHub for you. So next week we will want to do delete, which is pretty simple. And then we'll also want to do edit, which is the most complicated because we've got to do a single select first, populate a form, and then do an update on the back end. But we'll get that working. We'll make a few customizations to this. So you don't need the database at all for your portfolio assignment. Just a reminder, the portfolio is due next Thursday. All right, I will let you guys get to your next class, and I will see you in a little bit.